so let's do our polish on our space shoot 'em up. I'm going to open up our level. I'm going to save our UI work. Let's play. I kind of want to do weapon power-ups now, and the first step to doing weapon power-ups is to support the concept of weapons that shoot a little differently. So let's just go to particles here. These particles are a little bit out of control. Just changing the social size here. I know I have 2 of these. I'll get rid of that one. And let's change these things to be like 20 and 20 and 20. So it's a little bit more reasonable. Okay. That'll be our projectile. And we can just set up our character. Just start off by having our character shoot multiple projectiles. And just type character. There's my ship. And currently we have a spawn point for the projectile here. Let's add a billboard to him so I know where he is. Actually, instead of a billboard, let's add an arrow. We'll parent that to the spawn point, and we will reset its position so it's right on top. We can just duplicate this spawn point. Let's just make 3 to start, and just name them appropriately. Okay, and actually want to have one scene component that's going to be the parent for all of these spawn points. Okay. Spawn root. I'm going to reparent these to the root, and I just want a couple more of these arrows on top of each one. And the spawn point here, which are all part of the root. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to raise up this one here, like so, about 30 units, and then I'm going to lower this one 30 units, and pull back 60. Pull this one back about to 60. And so each of these is going to represent a spawn point. And currently, if we go to our blueprint, projectile fire here, we are currently spawning it always at the first spawn point, but instead what we can try to do, I'll show you one naive way to do it, and then we'll do it a better way right after that. So I'm just going to take this first, and let's create a function for this. Function here, and call this thing spawn projectile. We need to go inside of double clicking on it. I'm going to expose this thing. I actually don't want to just plug in that. I'm going to create an input for it, and this scene is going to be a scene component. Is going to be the input. Call it a spawn point, and that way whoever calls this function can change what spawn point they use. So a naive way is to just duplicate this 2 and 3 times. This isn't really going to work for when we have power-ups, but at the very least I can use this to show. I'm just going to drag each of the spawn points here just to prove that it's actually going to spawn each of them. Connect these here like so, and go. Cool, and shooting 3. Okay, so let's do this a better way, because instead of doing it like this, I really want to have like 7 or 8 different spawn points here, because this is all well and good, but I want to have enough room for my power-ups to actually grow. So I'm going to duplicate this thing, call it projectile spawn point 4, and duplicate that. Call this one 5, 5. Let's do 7 total. What's nice is that I can just move these down 30 units. Actually going to take the arrow component here, give them all an arrow. So, okay. It's here, here, and here. So I know where these things are. Alright, so here's spawn point 4. Let's reset the transform on this. When you click and drag, make sure you reset the transforms on all your arrow components, otherwise it will try to keep it where it was. Okay. 1.4. which one did I move? There's 2, there's 3, and there should be 4. Okay, so let's put 4 up here. And let's actually rotate this guy up like 10 degrees. And 5, we'll rotate him down 10 degrees. And 6, we can actually move him up here. And he is basically at, just put him at 0 on the X, 110 on Y, and we'll rotate him up 20 degrees. And projectile point 7 here. He's at 0 on X, negative 110 for Z, and we'll rotate him down 20 degrees. So that's going to represent all of the potential spots that our projectiles can fire. And I don't want to set it up so that I have to go over each one of these things. I just want to do it all through a loop. So what we'll do is, if the weapon is not cooling down, we're going to do a for loop. Sorry, not a for loop. Let's just start backwards. Let's start with a root. Grab the projectile spawn root, which is the parent of all of them. Get child components. We'll do get children components here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a for each for all the children. Okay. Remember, connect the false here for the weapon cooling down. And in the loop body, this thing is actually going to represent the spawn point. So what we can just do is call spawn projectile, which is the function we made earlier. I just connect that there and plug that spawn point in from the array element, and then when it's completed, just go ahead and go back to what it was doing before. And that's it. So it'll shoot all 7. It's going to fire all of them as if I had the full power up. Don't mind the trails are kind of broken because of how many I have right now. But what we can do is we can also add some weapon power-ups so that we have to actually pick up something. So the first thing is that we kind of are spawning every single one, but what we can do is we can control how many spawn with a variable. So we'll do weapon power. And we're going to start this weapon power at 1. And all we have to do is compare the array index, which starts at 0, and is it less than this weapon power? And if it is, we'll do a branch. Reconnect the loop body, and if it's true, then weapon power will control how many we spawn. So I set weapon power to be 1, so I'll only spawn 1 projectile. But if I click on weapon power and I start off at like 5, it spawns 5. It basically is going over each of these children in order and picking 5 of them to spawn. And so what we have to do is we just have to make a pickup that controls this. While I'm here, let's make some missile spawn points as well. Kind of do the same thing. Make a missile spawn root. Just duplicate the projectile spawn root. And we will add 2 scene components to this guy. Missile spawn point 1. Duplicate that guy. And an arrow to him as well. So making sure making sure that the transforms are clear. And I'm just going to move this here. Looks like about 90, negative 90 for the missile spawn points. Cool. So right now all this is controlling this right here controls shooting it from the projectiles. What I actually kind of want to do is do this for the missiles as well. So spawning a projectile. The projectile that's currently spawned is always a BP projectile, but what we can do is make a missile instead. So let's go back here, projectile. And we're going to make a blueprint based on this, which will let us use everything that this thing normally does, including all its blueprint behavior, but we can override some properties. In this case here, I'm going to make two. This projectile is currently the base. This one I'm going to make the missile. And I'm going to make another blueprint based on the original projectile. Save and close. It likes to name them. If I just type projectile here, you should have 3 total. Just scale these guys down. So I have child, missile, projectile. I'm going to rename my missile, or rename the child to be gun. And put my filter back. This thing is going to be the base, this is going to be the gun, and this is going to be a missile. The reason I'm going to do this is because I want the component here. I don't actually want this particle system here. I'm going to cut it out of here, and instead I'm going to put it, each projectile is going to have its own particle system. So here's the gun, go to its components, and I can paste that particle system here. So that's fine for the gun, but that's not what I want to use for the missile. Go here and let's duplicate this guy here, call this one missile, or projectile missile. Just going to change this. Instead of mspark, we'll do the gradient. And that way I can also change the color overlay here. Very angry red. That's fine. And we don't need smoke for this guy. But we can actually scale him up a little bit, just so he's a little bit more distinguishable from the other ones. And we're going to use this in our character. So this projectile class, we're going to add an input for it. So we're going to make a new input, and it's going to be BP projectile is going to be the class, the purple one, and projectile here. Just plug that directly in this way. Pile, go back to the event graph, and now this thing takes a projectile. And what we can do is we can just drag this up. I'm going to actually collapse this into a function as well again, because it's kind of getting a little out of control. We're going to collapse this to a function here, and this is going to be fire guns. And I'm going to double click on that guy, and spawn projectile is going to be here, gun. Okay, and we're going to make this thing go into a different phase. We're going to have to do some of the same behavior. So I'm actually going to copy this, paste it here, and instead of children components on the projectile spawn root, we're just going to do the missile spawn root here. And we're still going to do a for each loop, but we're not going to do this anymore. We're just going to disconnect this guy. And as long as the swap this order here. Weapon power is, well, we're going to compare weapon power. If it's greater than 7, that means we've unlocked the missiles. Okay. And this spawn projectile will be missile instead. And I'm going to break this part into a function as well. Collapse this into a function. And I'm going to call this one fire missiles. That way, it's just 2 nodes to control firing guns and firing missiles if we need to. My weapon power start off at 5. If I pick it up to 7, I should fire all my guns but none of my missiles. And then I'll crank this up to like 8. And let's see, it's not firing the missiles. Let's just double check here. I did everything correctly. There's the missile spawn root. And if the weapon power is greater than 7, then that's going to be the spawn point here. sure. Right. We didn't actually assign the particle system to the missile projectile. Go back to a blueprint, search for projectile, go to the missile here, go to its components, no particle system. So it was spawning, but it just wasn't visible. And I'm going to pick the template to be missile. Okay. There's our missiles, the red ones. We can also tweak the properties here. Projectile currently does 50 damage, but we can instead promote this to a variable called damage. And what that will do is it will let us tune the damage so that when we go to the missile, go to the default properties, there's damage, and we can just crank this up to be 200. Alright. So that's it for this. We'll pick up power-ups in the next video.